Our New Testament lesson comes from Hebrews chapter 11, and I will read verses 1 to 3 and then skip to verse 8 through 16. Listen now for a word from God. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Indeed, by faith our ancestors received approval. By faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things that are not visible. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to set out for a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he set out, not knowing where he was going. By faith he stayed for a time in the land he had been promised, as in a foreign land, living in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith he received power of procreation, even though he was too old. And Sarah herself was barren, because he considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one person, and this one as good as dead, descendants were born, as many as the stars of heaven and as innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. All of these died in faith without having received the promises, but from a distance they saw and greeted them. They confessed that they were strangers and foreigners on the earth. For people who speak in this way make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of the land that they had left behind, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God. Indeed, God has prepared a city for them. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. M is for mischief. It's a book about 3 children whose family moves to a new town and into a house with a summer kitchen containing an old pot-bellied stove. And the dial on top of the stove had 2 settings, O and M. And the mysterious man who showed up to service the stove told them O was for ordinary and M was for mischief. And he left them a cookbook. The children decided to test out the stove by making some hard-boiled eggs. And of course, they turned the setting to M. After they ate their eggs, the little sister only ate half of hers. She was a little nervous, so the big brother Tommy gobbled up the rest of hers. They watched with fascination and with horror as Tommy faded from sight. He was completely invisible. Mischief certainly followed. As the parents tried to find their son, the sisters tried to protect him. The middle sister never does turn invisible, and the younger one, having eaten only half of an egg, has her bottom half disappear. We, as a group of people, have long had a fascination with things invisible. And if I were to gather a group of, 6 to 10 people together and said, what superpower would you dream of having? I promise you someone would say, I'd want to be invisible. There are books and movies and cartoons and tales that all involve invisibility. Do you suppose that the author of the book of Hebrews knew of our fascination with things unseen when describing faith? History has not left us with the knowledge of who the intended readers of the book of Hebrews was, nor do we know who the author was. And really, it's not even much of a letter. It's more of an extended written sermon. We can tell that it's designed to encourage the reader, whoever that may